Hey guys, I'm Dov, and I'm here today to atone for my sins to the lady. I have in the past said that Bretonnia is not great at fighting large single-entity models that are highly armored. Well, sort of. I think I might have found something to combat that. We'll see, though. Let's take a look here. We've got Lewin with double Hippogriff Knights, a front line of tons of peasant mobs. We've got some peasants to back them up, regular peasants at arms, of course. Some bowmen as well with their filthy missile weapons, and just for good measure, we've got the Green Knight here on the ground, just to give us a bit of backbone. Lizardmen also don't have a ton of magic damage. Granted, the Regiment of Renown Temple Guard do have magic damage, and they are quite a common pick in this matchup, so do be warned. Also, that laser lizard is potentially a problem, so we're going to dispatch those Hippogriff Knights to go after them immediately. And then the Green Knight is going to tank some damage here while Lewin comes in and drops that sweet Sword of Couronne. Now, I had wanted to wait for the Hippogriff Knights to get here, but we popped Dolores Blade here with the Green Knight, and he's going to do a ton of damage to this Saurus Old Blood on a Carnosaur. My Lizardman opponent here with the 3 Feral Bastiladons and the Carnosaur Lord. Lots of heavily armored monsters, so we're certainly going to test that theory. Granted, Feral Bastiladons I know are relatively cheap and not the best armored monster in the world, but hey, it's sort of what we want, right? And especially the Saurus Old Blood potentially is a unit that's a big problem for Bretonnia. So you can see here the Hippogriff Knights rush in. Unfortunately, the Sword of Couronne was not active, while they came in, but Lewin's taken some damage. He can get back up in the air and heal that up. Meanwhile, over on the far side, these Hippogriff Knights are taking some shots in the back from Chameleon Skinks, which isn't the best. Chameleon Skinks do have okay missile damage, and if we take a look at the Filthy Peasants, they are fighting, but let's be honest. Who wants to watch filthy peasants get killed? Okay, maybe me. Oh man. Oh, Saurus beatdown. Saurus fighting peasant mobs is just, that's so one-sided. Anyway, they're not going to hold for too long. Those archers are going to be compromised soon, but at least they can get in some damage while the peasants die. The other peasants, that is. Over here, focusing on what's a little bit more important, we are finishing off these big armored dinos here with Lewin, the Green Knight, and the hit squad of Hippogriff Knights. You can see here one has been routed off. I believe one was shattered already. There were 3 here at the start, right? Yep, and so there's one more here to go. The Carnosaur Lord fled the scene. He is currently mopping up some archers, but at the same time, there's just a lot of peasants for him to go after. And the Skinks, they'd be much better off being the ones to chase down these peasant bowmen. They have shields, they're relatively fast. Instead, the Saurus Old Blood's going to be the one to do it. He does have pretty good armor, but, peasant bows with their volume of fire, they also have decent AP from what I remember. 3 AP per shot is actually pretty good for a non-AP missile unit, so they will be able to kind of plink away at him and do a little bit of damage. And as he kind of ping-pongs between these different units, they will come back from terror routing and then be able to return fire. So it's actually not the greatest situation in the world for that Saurus Old Blood. Peasant bows are also pretty underrated in my opinion. They're actually, for the cost, they're some of the best range infantry in the game. They have excellent range. Their weakness is their appalling leadership and just abysmal combat stats. Like, you do not want them anywhere near a melee fight in any situation. But at the same time, they are pretty cheap, so if you lose them, they're just filthy peasants, right? They're easily replaceable. They're just going to run off to their farms and, I don't know, do peasant stuff anyway. You can see here the Old Blood is giving himself that proc there to keep his leadership online. The Skinks are definitely following up on the peasants somewhat, but at the same time here, the monsters have been dealt with, and now Lewin and the squad, I guess Lewin is out hunting somewhere, I'm not really sure. The Green Knight tanking out some Saurus here, but basically the idea is you just move in with both of these units of Royal Hippogriff Knights on isolated units and just destroy them within a couple of seconds. Looks like Lewin is tanking out all the fire of these Chameleon Skinks and Skink Skirmishers. He does have the Lion Shield not active currently, it doesn't look like. No. But he does have it, you know, potentially, so he can tank out a lot of missiles like this. Of course, his regeneration as well will help him just soak all of the cowardly missile weapons here, so... yeah, at this point, just kind of a mop-up operation in terms of trying to finish off these different infantry units here. Saurus are pretty tough cookies, don't get me wrong. A lot of weapon strength. These unshielded Saurus, though, don't have the best melee defense in the world, and I mean, these are Hippogriff Knights. They are, thankfully, finally worthy of their name, and they have just really, really good stats in general. And of course, with the healing of Bretonnia, they also are very strong in that, again, low model count, easily healable. You can keep all 6 unit models alive relatively easily. You can see this unit still has all 6. This other unit as well still has all 6 and pretty close to their healing cap. Regrowth is just so good with these guys. And 2 units, especially with the melee defense debuff of Sword of Crone, like, you could even go after units like these Saurus Spears, which is really not units that you're supposed to be fighting necessarily straight up, but you can, with Sword of Crone active and just, you know, multiple charges from different directions, just wreck units within a couple seconds, and they just don't even have a chance to fight back. It's amazing. The best way to play Bretonnia, in my opinion. And I have had a lot of success with it. And I'm just gonna be quiet for a minute here and let you guys soak it up. Just kidding. You guys are here for the commentary, right? At least I would hope so. I'd hope you like listening to my voice if you're watching. Maybe you don't. Who knows? But at this point, the Saurus are just slowly getting terrified away. I mean, they do have good leadership. They're gonna hold out for some time. But it's just a matter of time. Honestly, the reason the balance power is still holding is because there's all these ranged units with so much ammo left. But army losses will be hitting relatively soon. We just need to take out a handful more units. You can see exactly what I was mentioning before. Just charges from multiple directions, eliminating an isolated unit as quickly as possible is going to be the order of the day. So yeah, Hippogriff Knights are just such an awesome unit. And when Bretonnia was properly released, you know, when Hippogriff Knights came out, when Bretonnia's campaign was fully released and everything, they were such a limp unit. They had low armor, just kind of terrible stats. They have successively been buffed over time, and currently, as the game stands, they are really, really good. And I don't see a ton of Bretonnia players taking them too often. I mean, certainly they can be a bit risky. Here, it's not super likely that your opponent will guess that you're going to do this and go with tic-tac-toe. I mean, I guess it's possible, but I don't see a ton of other people doing that. So just in general, against Chaos, against Dwarfs, against even like High Elves, this strategy does work quite well from my experience. And let's try it out one more time. I do have one more replay for you. This time, we're up against a Dark Elf opponent. And I know, another no caster, but it's a good reminder. Bring a caster. Both of these replays my opponent did not, and definitely would have benefited from doing so. Certainly Lore of Heavens for the Lizardmen, or Beasts, either is decent, honestly. In this matchup, Fire, as I mentioned before, can be quite good. Death, Shadows, pretty much anything. Beasts even. You really can't go wrong with any of the Lords of Magic. Dark Magic, of course, if you have a legendary Lord that can wield it. But for my opponent, the Hydra here is potentially an issue. It doesn't have amazing armor. 60's okay. Pretty low melee defense, but it does have good weapon strength and, of course, regeneration. So it could be a tough nut to crack, potentially. We've also got some supporting Dark Shards, Dread Spears, nice mixed front line with some Oblique Swords, some Witch Elves, get my units trapped up, and a nice ambush of Cold One Knights laid here with some supporting Dark Riders and Great Swords. This time we've got some mounted yeoman archers, as skirmish cav are pretty good in general against the Dark Elves. They do have a lot of high value, low armor units, and just having the mobile skirmishers, because Dark Elves also have pretty good mobility as well, does make them a bit easier to protect. Then again, we do have some peasant archers with pox arrows as well, whole bunch of men-at-arms and mobs up front as you would expect, Damsel Lore of Life, Lewin, two hippogriffs as you would expect. yeah, we're going to be moving up into the skirmish phase here. The mounted yeoman archers will move up and try and do a bit of counter skirmish here. Just bait out some volleys from these dark shards. Dark shards aren't the most accurate in the world. They will definitely get some serious damage done though, so you do have to be a bit careful doing that. But just in general, trying to catch some of my opponent's units out of position here. I'm eventually going to just decide to go after those shades with Lewin, of course, because of the Lion's Shield. And with Blessing of the Lady active, that gives him a total of 64% resistance against those missiles. Of course, he then gets his armor against the non-AP portion of the damage, which for shades is quite minimal, but yeah. Predictable results in melee as Lewin starts to absolutely club them to pieces. And yeah, we're just going to follow up with these Hippogriff Knights here. The Cold One Knights are going to try to protect the shades here, but it's going to go about as well as you would expect once the Hippogriff Knights come in for the rear charge here. And again, Sword of Corone debuffing their melee defense. And this is going to be a nasty one. Here comes the other units of Hippogriff Knights. The peasant line is moving up just to start distracting. Ideally, I want to get these pox arrows in a position to start shooting this Hydra. That's going to be great value for them. Shooting the Dark Shards is going to be good value. Pretty much shooting any of these units that's more than 600 points is going to be pretty good. But let's focus in on this fight, because this is what we want to see here. The Witch Elves are going to run in. This will trap some of these flying units on the ground, which is unfortunate. With the spear support, I'm not super crazy about this engagement. You know, I would prefer to just be able to charge down and do that massive charge damage. But we do have the Defenders of the Fleur-de-Lis getting in this area as well. They should be able to get up and around. My intention is to go after those crossbowmen. But you can see the pox arrows and the mounted yeomen both raining in fire. My opponent sweeps up and around with these dark riders, manages to get into the pox arrows a little bit here. I'm slow to react with the spears, which is not great, but those peasants should come back from routing, hopefully. Meanwhile, we're going to dump a regrowth onto these Hippogriff Knights. Since I can't pull them out of combat, we're just going to heal them and hope that they can sustain the damage that they're taking. Witch Elves do a pretty good amount of damage, even to large armored targets. I mean, they just have pretty good weapon strength overall. 9 AP actually per swing is a lot lower than I thought for some reason, but I don't know. They are taking little chips of damage from the spears and from the Witch Elves occasionally, and just the fact that the unit models are so spread out like this, and you can see that they're kind of getting surrounded a little bit. Hopefully you can see the map's a little bit dark, and I mean the purple Dark Elves are kind of hard to see on this map, I'll be honest. Witch Elves are much easier because of their bright white skin. But yeah, with the Hydra in here, I don't really want a lot of this with all this infantry support around. The defenders get terror routed by the Hydra, so instead we're going to get out of dodge and try and potentially go after these Dark Shards, shut down the missile support, swing back around, wait for Sword of Corone to pop, and then maybe jump on this Hydra, jump on the Dreadlord here. Getting back to the filthy peasants, though, they're doing a great job dying. And over here, they're even actually getting some work in against these Bleak Swords, which is not the worst thing in the world. We did manage to get these pox arrows back from route. The Dark Riders are still going to be an annoyance, though. You can see my opponent has some still here. These ones came back from routing, so yeah, we'll see. Balance of power still reasonably close at this point. Sword of Corone is active, but Lewin is isolated here, and, you know, the Hydra has good enough AP. Granted, it's a little bit distracted by these Hippogriff Knights here. They have a regrowth. Still, again, 6 unit models. You can see how low their HP is, but they still have all 6 unit models critically, so that regrowth is going to be generating a ton of value. The Knights here, the Cold One Knights, the Dread Spears can't hold their leadership. Even the Witch Elves now getting terrified away as I'm able to pull up some of these units back up in the air. You can see the one Hippogriff Knight did drop a unit model here, now down to 4 unit models. This one that got pinned in on the ground by the Enrage. The Dreadlord also will be able to do some okay damage against isolated unit models like this because she has pretty good combat stats. Not the best AP on horseback, but it's decent. 400 total weapon strength is not bad. And 140 armor piercing, I mean, it's something. With 65 charge bonus, she can get some work in as long as she doesn't get, you know, massively singled out. Speaking of getting singled out, though, oh man, Nice Hydra breath for a cinematic shot. Not going to do a whole lot, but it looks nice, certainly. Unfortunately, most of the projectiles missed, but yeah. These hippogriffs are just making absolute mincemeat out of these poor Dark Elves. I say poor Dark Elves. They totally deserve it. They are just horrible creatures. But they are dying a slow death, and we are pulling ahead on the balance of power for the lady here. Pox arrows raining in some fire. You can see those dark shards trying to break the pocket. We managed to break some of them with the spears, but hopefully we'll be able to save these archers. It's mostly just for show at this point. I've pretty much got this in the bag, but I do want their support against this Hydra. The poison in particular is poisoning the Hydra to debuff his stats, debuff his weapon strength, and, you know, just make him worse overall. Definitely advantageous. We're going to pull Lewin away there and just let those peasants get eaten by that horrible thing. And the Dreadlord's coming over. At this point, there's not a ton to be able to protect the Dreadlord. All the calves are pretty much gone. Not real worried about these Witch Elves either because they're so tattered. So we're going to get into a position now where we can try and go after my opponent's Lord to finish this thing off. You can see the Dreadlord takes a charge from Lewin in the back, and then the Hippogriffs are going to follow up, get a nice full surround, and it is all over. Lawbreaker, you have violated the law. I guess you didn't want to pay the fine, huh? Then pay with your blood. Sorry guys, I couldn't resist. Yeah, definitely paid with the blood though. Just completely dying a horrible death there. Well deserved, you know, for a filthy Dreadlord. And that is going to probably lead to army losses here. This Hydra's holding out for the moment. There's not a whole lot left for my opponent on the battlefield. You can see just a few dark shards here. And yeah. Pretty much just that Hydra left, but Hydra's leadership isn't amazing in general, and as soon as Lewin gets in range with that Sword of Corone, my opponent admits defeat there. So, yeah, pretty long video today, but I wanted to show off both those replays, both as a PSA. I mean, bring a caster, please, guys. I can't tell you how many times, how many replays you guys haven't seen that my opponent hasn't brought a caster, and I've just completely steamrolled them. So, PSA, please bring casters, guys. You can cut spells on them and make them relatively cheap, and it's almost always worth bringing. Anyway, back to the main point though. King Lewin with the Hippogriff Knights, just using that massive Alpha Strike potential that you can see here. Again, paid off big time. 103 kills, 148 here. XP chevrons all the way around. Not a whole lot of kills. Well, I guess 50 kills on peasants isn't bad. Someone's getting an extra half shilling for the campaign. Yeah, these guys had their XP chevrons to begin with, but 50 kills on peasants against Dark Elves still. 43 for these guys, not bad at all. 64 for Lewin himself, doing some heavy lifting. And yeah, for my opponent, definitely would have benefited from having a caster, but overall the build's pretty solid. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of shades, so I would probably cut those shades just for a caster. But other than that, I think this build definitely has a lot going for it. The Hydra can be a big pain if your opponent doesn't have the right tools. Granted, the fire arrows can be pretty big danger. They're not a super common pick in this matchup, but they are a danger. The Dark Riders, though, I like quite a bit. The Dark Riders and the Cold One Knights and the Repeater Crossbows, you know, working in tandem. Having a couple more Witch Elves probably wouldn't hurt, but anyway. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. I've rambled long enough for this one, so if you do like this sort of content, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more daily battle replays, and we'll see you next time.